In case you missed it, here's a Sports Animal Rewind.
To talk about that Flacco deal and some other news in the National Football League, we bring in from the NFL Network, Ian Rapoport joins us here on the new Sentinel Sports page. Hey, Ian, Vince, and Evan. How you doing, Ian?
What's going on, guys? How are you?
Hey, we are good. Great to talk to you, Ian. And then let's hit on the former Vols at the Combine first. And let's start with Tyler Bray. We've heard some mixed things about Tyler Bray and how sort of the interviews went. He certainly looked like he threw the ball really well. What did you see and what did you hear from Tyler Bray's performance at the NFL Combine?
You know, it's tough because there's really obviously not a number one quarterback this year. I mean, that goes without saying. There's no Andrew Luck. There's no RG3. And so what you hear more about is general dissatisfaction with all the quarterbacks. You know, you start to hear a little buzz about Matt Barkley. I guess, you know, Bray threw it well at the Combine, but I think there's some concerns about his fundamentals and just sort of overall teaching at the position. He's probably more of a little bit of a work in progress than you probably want for a guy who played at a big-time program. You know, it's not a good quarterback class, and I think if someone falls in love with him, I think you know, he'll be fine. But I certainly didn't hear much buzzing about him, about anyone. It's just kind of that kind of year, I guess.
Along those lines, Cordero Patterson is a guy that physically is just kind of a freak of nature, does some amazing things, you know. And then you always hear this time of year that kind of, you know, the commentary, the rumors, the gossip. Oh, he did poorly in his interviews, and you know, I mean, Patterson is not a Rhodes Scholar necessarily, but he's always a nice kid when I dealt with him. And how much does that stuff matter, you know, in the interview stuff if you're just as good on the field as someone like he is?
Well, I think there's two things they look at. One is, you know, on the field is obviously very important. I mean, I think with him, it's consistency issues. It's, you know, drop balls. It's not being where he's supposed to be. It's, you know, if you're going to draft a guy in the first round, and I really think he has a very good chance, a very, very good chance of being drafted in the first round, you want someone who is going to be consistent and you're going to know what you're getting. And so I think teams are trying to, you know, wrap their head around that and just figure out, you know, I'm going to pay a guy all this money, I'm going to invest a first-round pick, what exactly am I going to get? As far as the interviews, the problem with this process is, you know, let's say you're the Buffalo Bills and you want to draft a receiver to complement Stevie Johnson, you're picking in the top 10, and, you know, Patterson might be your guy. Well, it actually helps you to spread bad rumors. I'm not saying the Bills did this, but it actually helps you to spread bad rumors about a guy, because then maybe other teams will buy in and he'll kind of fall on their board. So it's really difficult to take on face value anything you hear out of the Combine, because he could have done great in the interviews. I mean, really all teams want is just to be honest. I mean, they know the answers to all the questions they're asking. They just want you to tell them what happened, even though you already know anyway. So as long as you're honest, you're fine. But the rumors that come out, they don't always jive with reality, and that's probably tough for some players to hear, but it's also something that teams do this kind of year to try to get a guy they like to fall right to them.
Ian Rapoport for the NFL Network joining us here on the new Sentinel Sports page. Vince Ferrara, Evan Woodbery. What about Justin Hunter? He's another guy that on some of the mock drafts that you see from your colleagues there at the NFL Network, he appears, including former Vol Charles Davis. What'd you see? What'd you hear from Justin Hunter?
You know, not as much, I would say. Certainly not as much as Patterson. You know, I think right now, guys are sort of sorting out what you have and what you don't, and, you know, seeing for the first time, you know, so probably, I would say probably not as much buzz as you would think. I mean, he's a good athlete. I think a lot of guys know that, but, you know, besides that, it's a little too early for the sort of nitty-gritty type stuff.
Ian, I'm wondering, the NFL Combine as a whole, is it, do you see guys making huge jumps in the Combine, or, I mean, I guess the storylines coming out this year, to me, I don't recall hearing about two or three guys that just made huge leaps this year, or were there and we just didn't hear about them.
Well, I think what's happening is, you know, there's so much they're scouting, and now they're scouting on TV. I mean, we have a scouting expert at NFL Network, and Daniel Jeremiah, ESPN has one. I think everyone is sort of understanding the process a little better, and so there's not as many quote unquote combine jumps because everyone knows it's really just a part of this process. So really what you see is a guy will perform, and it'll force teams to go back and look at the film. That's about what you get, the most you get. So a guy like Niall Davis goes and runs like a 4.140 or something, and everyone goes, "Holy cow! Why didn't this guy play? Like, what did everybody miss?" So you go back and you look. McCaleb from Auburn, same thing. What do we see on film versus the blazing 40 that he ran? Manti Te'o, it's like he looked unathletic. He ran a bad 40. Certainly wasn't impressive. Let me go back to the tape and see if what I saw matches the performance in spandex with everyone watching on the field. So that's kind of what you get. I think the myth of kind of risers and fallers is sort of isn't really there anymore. But it does force everyone to go back and do research.
Ian Rappoport from the NFL Network joining us here on the new Sentinel Sports page. Ian, we heard from Joe Flacco coming back from break. What were the interesting parts of that contract? Obviously, the dollars are big, but what were the interesting aspects of that contract, and what does that do for sort of the next man up or the next guys up in terms of elite quarterbacks looking for a new deal?
Well, to me, the interesting thing was that he could have been paid like a top 5 quarterback in August, and he bet on himself. He decided that he just didn't quite think he thought he was worth more than the Ravens thought. I remember him telling me, and I remember Flacco telling me in September, the longer they wait, the more my price goes up. And I kind of laughed because it was, first of all, you don't hear guys talk like that very often. Second of all, this wasn't Tom Brady or Drew Brees or Peyton Manning. It was Joe Flacco, and he was exactly right. I mean, that's really the crazy thing, that he was right all the way through. I mean, he ended up being the highest paid quarterback in the NFL. So everything he said, everything his agent said, they were right. And, I think he answered the questions honestly, but I don't think even he thought that it would be that honestly where it would all come true. I think for the next guys, it's really all about leverage. It's not that Joe Flacco's a better quarterback than, Drew Brees. It's that he got hot. He proved himself in every way possible. His deal was up, and the franchise tag was so crippling that they had to do this deal. They really had no choice. And so, you're worth what a team will pay you. And I think this is what he's worth. I think Aaron Rodgers will be the next monster one. And he'll get a little more.
With Tom Brady's deal, it appeared, it was, I guess, presented that it was a salary cap friendly sort of deal, that he maybe took less to help the Patriots out. In reality, is that what that is? And will that sort of start a trend for other big contracts and other guys in the league?
We don't know what reality is. And that's what's interesting with the Patriots contract. So here's what we know on Brady. He got a $3 million signing bonus again, and the next 2 years of his contract are fully guaranteed. So he's going to get all that. What it looks like now is that he's going to get $7 million, $8 million a year over the final 3 years of his career. The problem is, is he going to get to 2015 and say, whoa, why am I paid like the worst quarterback in the NFL? Why am I being paid like a rookie? And I don't know. I mean, I think, and everyone else thinks, that they're going to end up redoing the deal. They don't have to. He can just play for this. And that's really what the question is whether when he gets to be 38 years old, will he just play the deal out, understanding that it helps the salary cap, or will he want the new deal that he's probably worth? That's why it's tough to find out reality, because we don't know whether they're going to renegotiate. But on the surface, it all looks good right now. I know that. Ian,
last thing with you, and we'll cut you loose. The Kansas City Chiefs traded for Alex Smith. Now appears that they've re-signed Dwayne Bowe. What, in your educated opinion, what do you think the Kansas City Chiefs now do with that number one overall pick?
I think they're going to pick the best player available. And, it sounds pretty simple. But, that's, I don't think they've done anything that's going to indicate where they're going to go. Now, if the best player available is D. Milner, then they need a corner. They're going to be looking for one in free agency. I think they might draft him. if they have two good tackles now in just signing Brandon Albert, locking him up with the franchise tag. I still think they could go left tackle. Luke Jokel's a guy who's if you're going to draft a Hall of Famer, then it doesn't matter if you sign one at his position the same year. That's a short-term decision. So I think they're going to pick the best player available, and I don't think anything they've done in the last couple of days will change that.
Ian Rappoport covers the NFL for the NFL Network, NFL.com. You can follow him on Twitter as well. It's at Rapsheet, R-A-P-S-H-E-E-T, at Rapsheet on Twitter.